Okay, we're good to go.
And then approval of the minutes. I first did. We need a second or?
Yep.
Sure.
I
Yeah, go ahead and I
seconded
second
the.
it.
Oh wait, Enver.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. With the Inver Hills budget consultation. So if you want to take it away, then.
So, David Milton is our CFO, and he's here to present for you guys. I need to make sure that he has the access that he needs. I think. David, you should have access to share your slides if you want to at this point, for sure.
Okay. Yes, I can. Here we go. Everybody see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So basically just prepared some slides to kind of give perspective on everything, but ask questions anywhere along the list, along the presentation. But an overview in terms of what the outlook for fiscal 21 starting July 1st of this year looks like. Based on all the information we have available, and again, this is kind of the budget was put together previous to any known impact to COVID-19. And quite obviously, the CFOs are in discussion now about when we would create another more realistic budget reflecting the current environment. And that's probably going to be around in the fall term when we have a better sense. We've gotten through the summer and through all the other unknowns that we're facing today. And then we'll put together a budget. But everything I'm presenting today is pre-COVID-19 in terms of how we got to what we knew to be true before basically 3 weeks ago. So stable enrollment outlook for next year. And I've got a little slide that kind of breaks that down. We've got longer range curriculum degree planning in terms of you students being able to look further out and schedule your curriculum and courses. Inver's recognized for accreditations across multiple accrediting bodies, and that's very helpful in the various degree programs you're in. I think you would agree that you have deep student support and services to help you from not only an academic progression, but also professionally and spiritually in a way in terms of the wraparound services that we provide. We're recognized as a strategic community partner in many ways, both through our alumni organizations as well as the relationships we have established, the continuing education, continuing technical training that we do for a number of employers, as well as the career fairs and visitors, the college campus visitors that we have that frequent our campus, I think speak to that. We have a very solid financial position. The Comprehensive Financial Index, the CFI of 4.2 is, so the Higher Learning Commission provides guidelines for all higher education institutions, and for colleges, the CFI minimum benchmark is 1.0. So we're 4 times that amount in terms of being, having a solid, stable balance sheet. And so very proud to convey that from a overall financial perspective, we're in pretty good standing. And if you compare that across the 37 institutions in Min-State, we're in the upper quartile. We're in the top fourth of institutions reporting across the state. So good, solid position to be in. We've got a very strong, robust equity and inclusion program. And we're still reinvesting in our campus. And I'll talk a little bit about the Business and Technology Center. So this is high-level overview of what our revenues and our expenses are looking like. You can see the apportionment of the yellow part being the tuition received to fund our expenses and services versus what the state appropriation provides. And this kind of breaks out where the money goes that we raise through state appropriations grants and student tuition. Bulk of it does go for personnel, actually. So the yellow personnel and the staff, the dark blue are primarily, and the little red sliver are personnel. So this is primarily obviously a service-driven business model, if you will. From an enrollment perspective, the projection for September, first term fiscal 21 is, and forgive me, I can barely see that myself. But overall, the takeaway is that there have been some historical declines since 2015, but it's stabling, it's leveling off, and we have expectations that we should be able to maintain it even after this COVID crisis, and potentially it might go up because as more people, when we're in a recession and more people are really sitting back and evaluating what did I just go through, and particularly in those that don't have advanced degrees, they're probably feeling the biggest impact of not being able to go to service type jobs. Well, now the opportunity is to rethink all that. And historically, recessions, just after a recession, has proved to provide significant enrollment and people dedicated to reinventing themselves. So don't have factual information yet because it's too early to know how this plays out, but generally speaking, I'm feeling very positive about future enrollment. This is a breakdown of student fees. The good news is that they are unchanged from this current fiscal year 20. They remain exactly the same. But as you all probably know, there is a 3% increase in tuition for fiscal 21. Kind of break down how we got there. So in 2019, when we sat down with the chancellor, sat down with the legislators and proposed the 2-year biennium budget for fiscal 20 that we're currently in, and for 21 next year, starting July 1st. The request was for $167,500,000. All that was funded at that time was $113,300,000, which left a gap of $54,200,000. So we knew 2 years ago that there was an unfunded amount to carry us through the 2-year horizon that we currently have. And again, all this was pre-COVID-19. So at the beginning of the year, I had mentioned to you all that Lead MN's Day on the Hill was coming up, and that encouraged you strongly to, and I still encourage you to write to your state legislators and express the need. But sadly, given the current economic environment we're in, the Commissioner of Management and Budget for the state has already come out and indicated that we're expecting a $1.5 billion surplus at the state level. But essentially that's gone. And, you know, every day they're looking at further reductions in reserves and because of the payments that are required for those that haven't been able to go to work and so forth. So bottom line is that there's virtually no likelihood that they would honor the $54.2 million request that we started at the beginning of the year, which ultimately leads us to the position we're in. So this is a graphic view of how that funding splits out. The two red sections represent the biggest amount or represent the 54.2 million. And of that, 39.7 was for tuition relief and campus support. And so not having access to those funds, where we find ourselves in a situation where we don't have a choice but to increase next year's fiscal tuition by 3%. So what that actually breaks out to and what you will experience is, so this is a comparison of the per credit chart, the per credit hour charge of 168.66 for the classes that you sign up for. If I took a full year's of credits, 30 credit hours for an entire year, that incremental 3% difference would total up to less than 1 credit hour of instruction. So, you know, it just kind of puts it in perspective. And I know any increase is painful, but at the end of the day, it translates to the equivalent of less than an additional credit hour. This slide gives perspective of the tuition credit hour charges across the 37 min-state institutions. Takeaway is that we're basically in the middle of the pack. And this last, well, almost last numerical schedule breaks out the cost per credit between classroom instruction, online courses, as well as some of the other representations that are out there. And again, as we said, the student fees are unchanged from last year. So we are still investing in the future. And one of the things that we were pretty confident, and I believe the legislators will fund our request, because it was in the top 5 across the state in terms of capital projects that were likely to be funded. So assuming that does happen, we're looking at 14.7 million to reinvest in our technology and business center. You can see the before and the after facsimile of what it will look like. So that's targeted to benefit over 2,800 students. There'll be a lot of natural lighting, wired and equipped for state-of-the-art technology. So we're very excited about that, and we think it'll be a recruitment vehicle as well because of the state of art. So lastly, the impact of COVID-19. We appreciate your flexibility and optimism. There's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of stress. I wish I could provide more insight, but you know, things change literally by the hour. So we need a little more time to get through this. So from a financial planning perspective, we like to, we plan based on knowns, but there are so many things in terms of how this virus will impact, well, in the midterm and even longer term, et cetera. So there's not much mention of or much thought in terms of how we can do things. We think the earliest we could rebudget would be in the September horizon, when we'll have a better sense of who's enrolled and who's on campus, and what the normal will look like going forward from there. There is federal support. It's more than likely. It is definitely on the horizon. I'll let, I think, Nikki or Mike, so I'll defer that speech information for later. As I said, with our CFI index, we've got a very strong balance sheet and we'll be able to weather this storm. I have no concerns. And the upside for us, enrollment's looking good. As I had mentioned, the people in Minnesota most impacted by the COVID-19, restaurant workers and service workers, I think a lot of them will be rethinking their career opportunities and consider reinvesting, like you have, in deepening and furthering their education, which will only be a benefit to us. So with that, any questions?
When you said that federal support is likely, what does that mean again?
So the CARES Act is recognizing the adverse impact that this virus has had on so many citizens. There is funding that will be available to all students that we're still getting instruction on what that looks like and the methodology as to how we spread it. And that's not going to be a lot, but it will be something to at least provide some sense of support, recognizing that everybody has been impacted adversely by this virus. So if you file taxes, there's the emergency assistance that will come to you directly from the government. This is yet another piece by virtue of the fact of you being enrolled in a higher education institution. So I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I think somebody else is going to speak directly on this, or
Yes, I will.
Okay, so I'll stop there. Any other budget questions?
I did want to add, I appreciate David's optimism, but I think my guess is that we're likely to get hit two ways. On the one side, and David alluded to this, the Minnesota, our state financially is going to be taking a big hit on this. And so I would imagine that we're going to see, I hope not significant, but I would guess we're going to see a cut to the state support because there just won't be the money there. I'm also not as confident that we're going to see increased enrollments. I think that dynamic may be there, but most of the other colleges are planning for pretty deep enrollment dips, at least those that I've talked to. And so there too. And so when we think about a 3% tuition increase, that's not ideal for us, but we also are recognizing that, in this biennium, we were allowed to raise tuition in each of those 2 years. But in the 5 years previously, we had no really significant change. 1 year went up a percentage point, and then the year after went down a percentage point, so it evened out. But we haven't had any tuition increase in 5 years prior to the last two. And so it may be that in the next biennium or going forward, we will see another tuition freeze, in which case, when you have 82% of your budget in people, there's not much flexibility. And so that's why we're being more aggressive in our thinking about the 3% now, trying to make sure that we can continue to provide a high quality education when we may see a cut both on the admission side as well as on the allocation side, and
So
may
basically-
even see a freeze in our tuition rate for the following year. So I'll stop there.
So because the government, the state government obviously has to fund other aspects, higher education is not on, might not be on the top priority of their list. That's why admissions might be lower for the next year.
It's more that, well, so half of our money comes from our allocation, about 49%. That's what, when we say allocation, that's the money that we as citizens are paying to support public education. We're subsidizing as a state in order to keep the tuition lower, right? This is why we can offer a lower tuition rate than many of the privates. But when the government just doesn't have the money, then all of us across all of our areas, whether it's transportation, healthcare, education, I think we're all going to see less. And so that's going to hurt us. But I also think as people are uncertain about the future, I think there's just, to David's point, there's a lot of unknowns about what's going to happen. So I think many colleges are anticipating that they're not going to see the enrollments that they had planned for in building out the budget projections. Because even though we might see more students come for reskilling, we might also see more students just deferring any entrance into higher ed, because there's a lot of uncertainties and they may just want to step out and go to work and do other things. So there's a lot of unknowns.
But from a state budget perspective, you know, they're looking at housing, they're looking at feeding people, they're looking at the healthcare costs. And so that they've got to balance all of those needs, and you know, to some extent, education certainly impacts your life, but you know, it's on the lower rung of basic necessities. And right now, there's a lot of basic needs that need to be addressed.
From a student's perspective, because I agree with actually everything that's being said, is what about the summer semester or fall semesters? With the lack of enrollment, could classes that one is scheduled for summer or fall already be stricken due to staff losses, faculty losses? You know, instead of having 3 classes with 10 people in it, do you believe the college would look at trying to somehow go from 3 classes down to 1 to obviously save money and faculty and all that kind of stuff? So that was, I guess, that's my question regarding student side of this impact.
Sure. So that's actually something that we do every semester anyways, is look at classes that have low enrollment and see if there are ways that we can combine those sections into, if there, if you have 2 classes that each have 6 students in them, it might make more sense to have 1 class that has 12. And those are the kinds of decisions that every semester the institution looks at that. From a student perspective, we always try to be really thoughtful about making those decisions to make sure that students who, if it's the last class they need to graduate, that we have an alternate plan to make sure that that's not a barrier that we put in place to prevent somebody from graduating or being able to get the credits that they need to move forward. So we have, like I said, we do that every semester. So we have existing processes that will help take a look at that. I think the thing that will be interesting is, in the past, we will often use kind of what happened the year before as a gauge of how this year is looking. So if we know, last year at this time we had 1,000 students signed up. So this year at this time we should have about 1,000 students signed up. We don't really have that predictive ability right now because the situation is so different than it was last year at this time. And so it'll be, it'll be tricky to make sure that we get the timing on that right, so that we give students enough time to get signed up and get into classes before we have to start making those decisions. But yeah, we'll likely have to make some of those once it gets closer to the start of the semester.
But that would include summer. I mean, I would imagine that summer
Yeah.
semester, that decision is coming sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, we usually will get like a week or two out. They'll start kind of really looking closely at some of those. There, you know, we have right now over 900 students signed up for the summer, which is a little bit over half of what we were hoping to have. But we're still actively working on making sure that students know all of our summer opportunities, know that summer semester is going to happen as it was going to happen before in terms of the start dates are all the same. You know, we're actually really well positioned for the summer because we are already at close to 70% of our summer classes. We're always going to be online anyways, so it's not much of a transition to move toward having all online classes for the summer. So we're still, you know, we're still having students come through for orientation. We're still doing the outreach and recruitment to try to fill the rest of those slots.
I'm not really a financial expert, but this is my, I guess, uneducated thought on it is, one, I feel like as faculty, we always sort of joked about, like, we need the economy to crash because it'll increase our enrollment. And then here comes a crash that actually has the opposite impact. So that was kind of like a double sucker punch. But I know in the recovery process, a lot of times we'll get things that will help boost that enrollment. So between now and the fall, I know the last peak enrollment that Inver had was during the recovery of the 08, and the government had a big push to provide people with money to go back to school and retool. So the hope is that maybe that'll be a part of our recovery package between now and the fall. And even if it has to happen in an online format, there'll be more money available for students to get back at it. And that may end up boosting us in the end, at least to some degree. So my 2 cents.
Sorry. I wanted to say 2 things really quick for you guys. One is that as a result of this meeting, and then if you guys, David said that he would be here for the next one for any additional questions. Brandon, as your student senate president, will write a letter to the chancellor of the system to let him know that you guys have been consulted. So essentially, it's a really important goal that students have a say and have the budget explained and have the ability to ask questions and get those answered, and to be given a chance to really understand what's happening with campus. And then it's so important, I'm sorry, I get so excited at budget time, but it's so important to the system that they have a whole process where you guys get to write and let them know that it was, like, that did happen, and really give your feedback. So if you have any additional questions, the only thing that I also want to say is we have about 15 minutes left, and we have one more agenda item that's really, we do definitely not want to postpone till next week at all. So keep both of those things in mind.
And thank you, because I was just looking at the clock too. It's I didn't know what else we had left or whatever the case may be, because I agree at 3 o'clock it's I gotta cut off. So
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to walk through if you're talking about the CARES Act funding.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Thank you. I'd be happy to walk people through it. So as you know, the CARES Act is the federal government has allocated a considerable amount of money to help people recover from all of the impact that the coronavirus has had on families, on individuals financially. And as part of the CARES Act, money has been sent out to all of our colleges and universities nationally. And so when we look at what we're getting from the federal government, and this does not include what might be coming from the states, but just from the federal government, they've released the first part of this, or they're in the process of releasing about half of what we will get. And so at Inver, that's about 859,000 that will be coming in. And the intent of that money is to go to students to help support them in the ways in which they've been impacted by the virus. And there's a challenge in how the intent and the Department of Education has given us some guidance on how to disperse these funds. Let me tell you a little bit first about how they decided how much we would get. They looked at the number of Pell eligible students that are coming to our college, right? This is one indicator of financial need. And they weighted 75% of the money we would get based on that student population. And then they looked at all the other students and said, all right, that will account for 25% of the money you get. And so that's what determined that we would get overall 1.7 million, 859 or 860,000 of that is what's coming out first to us. And that money is meant to go directly to students in some sort of emergency aid grant. And so what we're trying to figure out, and we're expected to figure this out very quickly, what's going to be our process for getting this money to students. And there is some flexibility. I think based on how they calculated the need, there is some expectation that we should give those students with the most need more of the money, and yet recognizing that all students are impacted. And so essentially what we're thinking about, and this is kind of the guidance that the system office has given us, is sort of thinking about dividing that 860,000 into 3 buckets. All right, the first bucket is recognizing that really all students have been impacted by this. And in fact, some students most impacted are not those who would fit in that Pell eligible bucket, because they up to this point were able to fund their college through things other than financial aid, but they've lost their job or their parents have lost their employment and now they're financially hit, or there are so I lost my train of thought. So the first bucket is intended to recognize that all students were impacted, and can we give all students something to help. The second bucket is recognizing that there are some students who are financially more vulnerable and really need additional funds if they're going to be able to recover from the impact and continue their studies. And then the third bucket is recognizing that the way in which we would try to disperse this quickly, there's still going to be individual need that we need to be able to try to support. And so and this is really what we're trying to figure out. Right now, we're thinking about that third bucket as taking 10% off the top. So about 86,000 would be held on and would be dispersed through emergency grants. Kind of like what we do now. If a student comes to us and says, I'm going to miss a car payment, I'm not going to be able to drive to campus, we can help those students out. And so it would be an application based. We'd make the application as simple as possible, but it would give us a lot of flexibility in supporting students through spring, summer, and through next fall. So that's what we're thinking about right now, is taking 10%, putting that into emergency request funds to help students that wouldn't be sufficiently helped by the other 2 buckets, or have an emerging need that still, might not yet be accounted for in their planning. So now what we're trying to figure out then is, what would it look like, if we gave every student the maximum amount? It would mean that we could give each student about $250, which is not a lot, but that's just based on our allocation, and we have about 2,800 students who are registered for spring. When you spread it out across that many students, it doesn't amount to a lot. But if we gave every student a little bit less money, then we would have more to give to those students with the most financial need. And so that's kind of what we haven't decided what that would look like yet. But if we were to give every student $100, for example, those with the most need could probably get more like $500, and it would help balance out because they're more vulnerable to the financial impact because they had less resources to draw on. And so, and as part of this, we wanted to make sure we got this to you so you could give us some thoughts on from a student perspective, what this might look or feel like if the current thinking that we're going through, if that's the plan we went with.
You said this was mostly federal funding, right?
Correct.
So
this is all federal funding, right?
Okay, so I feel like Minnesota as a state has been fairly good with helping out schools. So I think that's one other thing that we should be looking out for, seeing how much Minnesota is willing to fund like the schools and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't. It would be nice to know what their plans are so that we could try to correlate this, because what their hopes are is that we could get this money out by the end of this month. And so we have to really finalize our plan this week in order to be able to get the money out in the matching the expectation of the Department of Education anyways.
Right.
Going back to what you had said about the $100 per student or whatever to 100, that doesn't, I'm not saying that every dollar doesn't help, but at some point though, you have to look for the greater good. And I would agree with your statement as far as reserving more possibly of that money for additional grants down the road or whatever the case may be. That would be my thought process.
Okay.
I agree with Tim on that as well. Because for me in my situation, for example, I live with my mom and my brother, and my mom is able to work from home right now. So I am aware that there are other people out there who are struggling more than me and my family. So I think it is a good idea that you disperse more money to those who are in greater financial need. And when you talked about sending the money to all Inver Hill students, would it just be sent like physically to the mail, or it should students look out for like email notifications to try to?
So we're looking, and again, the goal is at the end of the month. There's a lot of administrative challenges that we're resolving, but we're looking at just applying it to your account.
All right, school account to like fund for classes.
Right, and we would not, that money, if you had outstanding debt, that money would not pay that debt. That's for you to be able to have to address current needs, to help with that immediate recovery. But to Tim's point, that's even if we distributed it equally, just by the way the formula works out for our students, there's not a lot there. And so that's kind of what we were thinking about, is trying to figure out how much do we give everybody versus how much we try to reserve for those. And the challenge we have is that Pell eligibility is only one measure of need, and it's not even a great measure. And so we're trying to see what we could hold in reserve to get to those students who, may not have even applied for financial aid, but have a real financial hardship. So that's what we're trying to balance.
And I think, and Michael, hopefully it's okay to bring this up. I think one of the things we have talked about, to your point, Emma, is that recognizing that there may be some students who feel pretty secure so far, or feel okay about where they're at. And so that we may be able to have an option to create a students helping students kind of model. So if somebody feels like that money, that they don't necessarily have personal need and they'd rather have that go to a student who has greater financial need, that we could explore having a process for students to say, you know what, thank you, but I would love to have that go toward somebody who needs it more than I do.
And then that could expand the amount that we're setting aside for the emergency fund, and then could increase the power we would have to be able to help students and help them in substantive ways, right? Because our current fund, I think the max we can give out in that, or the general, is about 1,000, and that's where it's a little bit more. You can make a substantial difference.
Real quick before we have to kind of end on this, or I have to go anyways, a similar question though, but different topic, I guess. So I have the veterans are doing a Zoom meeting tomorrow just to kind of check in on each other. Like, how one of the things kind of on the same line is the mobile pantry still accessible at this point?
It is. It's available Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's been moved to the welcome desk area in the College Center on the second floor. If you go in, there's a staff member working there, and there's pre-made bags available, so that can be kind of grab and go. And then there's also a couple of options where students can kind of choose some of the options that work best for them. And that'll last as long as we have supplies. Right now, I think we have enough for students to have either 1 or 2 bags, depending on what their need and family size is.
You say the hours again? I'm sorry, real quick.
Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
And Tim, that's all the non-perishable stuff. If you go to the Open Door website, they would have information on what you would otherwise find on the mobile pantry for perishable items as well.
Yeah.
One other
Thank you.
need
Like I
that
said, I
they
just wanted to pass on that information to
No,
all
we
the
thank
guys
you for
tomorrow.
getting that word out.
One other thing that they have there, Tim, that we've had students ask for is bags for toiletry items, so like personal care items that are available there as well.
Well, thank you for I mean, any thoughts you have, feel free to email them as well, and or run them through Nikki or through Brandon, however, whatever your process is for gathering feedback, we'd be happy to receive it.
The other question real quick, do we get, after this, is there any way that the minutes are submitted not just to the senators, but like to general students if they wanted to know what we discussed or whatever the case may be? Does that happen? If so, I don't know if it does or not, but where could we find that?
We have them, well, we're moving them to the Teams. We had them at one point in the Google Drive. We don't typically send out like the minutes because typically that's not, we usually send out like announcements in the student bulletin instead. But I think that we email them to you guys and you can definitely share them as well. If you want though, like I said, we're moving them into the team. Do you think that the team would be an option for the people that want to see it? Tim?
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe not the minute so much, but just kind of the like a summary of what the president had talked about. You know, this is something we're looking at. Sorry, obviously nap time's over. But same thing is just where does that go? You know, is that going to go on an announcement page where somebody can see that? And hey, I didn't know this was an option. Now this is a topic that I do have some spirit to discuss. When can I discuss that? How can I discuss it? Kind of things like that.
Yeah, I think that if you have ideas for good ways that you think students would engage with that, let us know. Otherwise, usually our methods are like the student bulletin and for online, those kinds of things. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you. Obviously, I gotta go.
So if there aren't other questions, then we're going to retreat into our cabinet and continue the conversation about the CARES Act. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
So you have my contact information in the slides. If you have any other further questions in completing your letter, please let me know. Just contact me directly. Email. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki, can I talk to you for a sec?
absolutely. Before everybody else goes though, everyone who's here, just so you know, we have the Student Senate stipend. I might have sent you a link individually, but I made an online form. If it works for you, it's great. It's $100 and you just have to do volunteer hours. Emily, my guess is that you've probably done a bunch that would qualify like in your other involvement, but it's 8 for the semester. And then Josh, John, and Emma, I know that you guys all completed yours with the budget process, so.
We did?
Oh yeah, more than 8. You definitely were
Yeah.
on meetings for way more than 8 hours.
I never recorded. I didn't know budget would count. I didn't record for any of that.
Don't worry about it. I can verify it, so I'm not even worried about you entering the dates or anything. I just want you guys to enter your contact information into the form and then just write the word like budget, and because I know when they were and was there for them. So
Mhm.
Can you send that to me again then? Because I don't think I
absolutely.
got that.
Can you send that to me again as well?
Yeah.
Oh wait, actually I think all that wait.
It was just
The
yeah,
stipend, that's-
yesterday. But
Yeah. Okay. I'll check to see if I have it.
Okay.
So how will that money get sent to us? Where does it go?
We get a check and it goes to your address in your e-services.
make sure, so check your e-services. If you don't know how to do that, make sure that address is up to date and your current address, because that's how it gets mailed to you.
So do we get paid with a check or in cash?
Check.
Yep, check.
And that's for us to use in whatever way we want.
That's your money.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a stipend, so that means it's a payment towards you, and it won't go into your student accounts. It's a check that comes directly to you that you can deposit into your own bank account.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome.
But I
Thank you.
think people do recommend that you get your faculty advisor a gift, but that's up to you guys. If for example, you wanted to buy Nikki's Joe Exotic thing and
Oh, not candy?
You know,
yeah, candy, there you go.
that it's been done that they've, bought the advisor's gifts, but
I love you guys, but I think that Warren's like another $50 there.
right.
Awesome. Okay, so I will forward to Josh and Emma for sure. Anybody else have anything? Oh yeah, Emily.
I don't think I got it either.
Oh, cool. I will send that to you as well. Sorry about that. I just have to find it and then I will send it out.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions? Oh, if you're returning next year and are interested in a position, did you see the stuff about the Student Senate Executive Board?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, so
I
next
couldn't figure it out.
What?
I could not figure it out. It was kind of confusing.
Oh, fair enough. So every year we run elections for next year, and we did not talk about it, but I will send out another email for that as well, but probably earlier. So basically you just nominate yourself for one of the positions, and then we'll run the elections at the next meeting. Everybody reruns. We re-elect everybody for the following year. So there's president, vice president, treasurer, legislative director, and then director of communications. Sorry, I do that a lot. President is kind of in charge of like running the meetings, making sure that everybody's on board. They check in with all the different exec board members to make sure that we're all kind of doing what we need to do, and they meet with me a lot. Sorry. Vice president works a lot with the clubs. They fill in for the president and when they can't run meetings, and they definitely are sort of tasked with making sure that clubs are know what Senate's doing, that we're reaching out to them. Legislative director is more about like the advocacy work that we do. So like get out the vote stuff in the fall, educating voters, stuff like that. And then like the census stuff that you guys did. Secretary takes minutes, keeps attendance, sends out like the emails that you guys have been getting from me would normally come from the, did I say secretary?
Yep.
Yeah.
Every time I say secretary, tell me I'm sorry. I mean director of communications, sorry. They also like help make sure that we're promoting the campus or the Senate in general. So normally they're the one that like runs the Facebook or makes posters or make sure that people will do that. And then who did I miss? Treasurer, sorry, budget. So they run the budget committee. Typically the treasurer would be the person that would send out mid-year requests, that kind of stuff. So working with that budget that you guys created. So we talked with Brandon a little bit. The goal is to have people who are coming back next year who want to run, nominate themselves. And then I'll have like a Zoom meeting with you one-on-one so you can ask any questions. We'll talk through like what the position is and kind of what to expect. And then run the election next week. Not next week.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you guys have questions?
An exec board member, right? Get a stipend. So
yes, $600 per semester.
$600.
I have a question regarding the orientation video.
Oh, yeah.
So I decided that I want to make a video and contribute.
Yeah.
I got your email that has the suggested talking points on what to say. So I can write up my script and then send you the video. when should I send you the video by?
Can you send it sooner rather than later? Does that make sense what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
today, tomorrow?
You mean like send it to you tomorrow?
Yeah, just send the video anytime today or tomorrow if you can. I think that Monday would still be fine. I just need to get all of the video clips to marketing to edit together.
Okay, so by Monday at the latest.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Josh and John, why do I point at you guys on the screen like you can, what does it matter? And Emily, actually Emily, did you get the video thing?
No.
We are, thank you for bringing that up, Emma. We are creating a video, it's a clipped together video for orientations. So one that will be sort of played and then one that's sent to students, having student leaders welcome new students who are taking the online orientation. Typically we have like our student ambassadors, so the work study for student life. They are in the orientations and can answer questions, but they can't right now, right, because it's online. So that's the goal. And then I have like instructions that I'm sending out to everyone. If that's something that any of you guys can do, oh, and Brandon, I keep missing you because you don't have a picture, I'm sorry. If that's something that any of you guys can do by like tonight or tomorrow or at the latest Monday, I can send that out with the stipend stuff too. Especially, not to say especially, honestly, everybody's welcome. It's just that we have a definite imbalance. Like we have a lot of female identified students. In fact, all of them are who are recording videos so far. Any dudes out there who want to record, we would really appreciate it because we also want to welcome those students. So you know. But I'm also reaching out. So if that's something that you guys can do, I can send out the instructions as well. Basically, I'm just having people record you're just like taking your phone, turning it landscape.
Landscape. That's what the
And then, yeah, you can record it on selfie mode if you want to try and negotiate that, but whatever. And then the instructions basically just say record what you want and then make sure that your background is appropriate and your lighting makes it so you can be seen. But yeah, I'll send that out with that. And then the stipend and the exec board stuff again before I go today. I'm just gonna send all of that to all of you. I'm so sorry. And I know it's like 3 big things and that does not usually work as well, but you'll all know, right? Because we talked about the stipend, we talked about the exec board nomination, and we talked about the video. So you'll know what they are.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
No, you basically covered what I was about to ask. I was just wondering what we did last meeting because I wasn't there.
Oh.
That's in the minutes as well.
Yeah. Well, and we went over, they did the big thing that they talked about that actually is good to know, I think. Well, they passed the budget, right? Were you there for that?
Last Thursday? No.
Oh, last Thursday. Oh, last Thursday at the budget meeting. We talked about club status and honor societies. And so those are 2 recommendations that are also coming to the Senate for next week.
Okay.
And I have them.
All right. Sounds good.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions?
Is there
If I
anything
have any
else at
more
all?
questions, I'll email you.
Thanks.
Is there anything else on the agenda that we wanted to cover quick or?
You guys do have the commencement thing, but your meeting's way over. So I would even say, I think that they'll have information next week. So you can do that next week too, or not next week. Every time. On
2
April
weeks from now.
30th. Yeah, 2 weeks from now, exactly.
The budget is next week at the same time.
I'm sorry, so we actually don't have a meeting scheduled for next week.
For budget committee?
Okay, so it's 2 weeks from now, next Senate meeting.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
But what I didn't say, you guys, I'm sorry, I just keep saying, the only other thing that I didn't, the Lead MN conference. Emily, I have you down. And then I have 2 more spots for students who want to go to the remote conference. Were either any of you guys wanting to go? I think 3 more.
I have no idea what it is.
Oh, yeah. It is, well, and maybe I'll just share, I'll pull up the agenda real quick. Oops. So it's, Lead MN is, that's totally fair. Why would you know what it is? I'm so sorry. Lead MN is the statewide student association, and it is, you actually, those fees that you pay a fee to them. They advocate for student issues at a statewide and federal level. And they have like a platform of things that they believe. And actually that's one of the things that they typically do at this conference is they elect their officers for next year and they set their platform, which is like their stances, right? So like one of their stances is that they want increased funding for Pell Grants in the country, right? That's a basic one, but they'll have other ones. They normally have a conference at Breezy Point. Obviously they can't do that right now. So it's at Lead MN. It's online. It's like right now they're starting. So the meeting is tomorrow. Oh, you guys, the meeting is tomorrow. Are you free tomorrow is what I'm asking you. I thought it was next week. Whoops. I apologize. Meeting is tomorrow. You basically have to go in and have tomorrow kind of free. And then they have like online workshops. Tomorrow is the only day of, well, that's not true. Tomorrow is live, and then and they have like workshops you can attend and all of those things. And then during the week, they want you to, at some point next week, sort of schedule a meeting with us, and probably would include like Shannon, to talk about the Get Out the Vote plan for next year. As somebody who wouldn't be returning, you'd probably be giving us information for our plan. As somebody who would be returning, you'd be kind of creating plans for the Senate for next year. And then the following week, they want you to come back for more live stuff. So it's tomorrow and then the morning next week. So do you know your schedule?
I think I might pass on this one. I have a lot on my plate currently.
Yeah. Emily, you're still good with this?
What time is it tomorrow?
So the meeting, they want you to go to anytime today or tomorrow before you go. They want you to look at a welcome video. But then tomorrow morning, the General Assembly starts at 9 a.m. So that's like their online meeting.
Okay.
And then they'd have meetings throughout the day.
Okay. Do you know when the last one is? I have an appointment tomorrow at, I think it's at 2:30.
Oh, yeah, you would just log out for that and then log back in if you can.
Okay, so I'm okay if I miss a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Now, are you sending me a link, or how do I go about this?
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a link. I have an email and it's not gonna be addressed to you, but I'm gonna forward that out to you and then see if I can get them to forward anything else that you might need.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Brandon, are you planning to be there?
Tomorrow? Yeah.
You are, okay.
I was just looking on the website, but I'm not seeing anything in order to actually get into it. I'm looking at my email now.
You should probably have gotten an email from them.
Okay.
And yours in particular would be specific because you have to set the voting delegates. But I'll check with them to make sure that they have the correct stuff for you guys. Anybody else free tomorrow? It's okay.
No.
Cool. Brandon and Emily. Thank you.
All right, so next meeting is 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right.
Well, thanks.
All right. If that's everything, I'm going to call this meeting to adjournment at 3:19 p.m.
Perfect.
All
Thanks,
right.
Brandon.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.